Goldberg, Goldberg, Goldberg. This is too late to sleep. So, as you most likely know by now, because you're watching, and because we talked about it on Sunday on Too Late to Live, Goldberg defeated Kevin Owens for the Universal Championship in under a minute. IWC fans were elated. Here's a look into their minds seconds later. This did not go over as well with other people as it did with me. As you might remember, I really liked it. I thought it was a great move. I thought it was very well done in that Kevin Owens was distracted. Brock Lesnar didn't even have that excuse. When Brock Lesnar lost to Goldberg, he was facing one-on-one. There was no outside interference. There was nobody taking his attention away. He was staring him right in the face, and he just got surprised. Kevin Owens was not ready. He has that out, and people are still upset. So there's no pleasing them. He's going to get his match against Chris Jericho that we all knew he was going to get. It's going to be for the U.S. Championship. That's probably the best possible outcome of that. After months and months of people complaining that the United States Championship was not getting showcased, it is finally a big part of WrestleMania. People still aren't happy because people are never happy. Nah. Later on Raw, Undertaker had a stare down with Roman Reigns. That noise you heard when Roman hit the ground was the noise of 1,000 smarks simultaneously ejaculating. But what's really going to suck is over the next 3.5 weeks, almost a little bit less by the time you see this, is everybody with that anti-Roman mindset fantasy booking Roman winning just so they can get upset at Roman winning. They have no idea what's going to happen, but they're so convinced that Roman is going to win, even when it doesn't mean as much as it did when Brock Lesnar beat Undertaker, that they can't help themselves. The next night on SmackDown, AJ Styles, after already having won the right to face Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania, lost that right after being placed in the number one contenders match with Randy Orton and being defeated. I think he handled it well, though. Now, the problem with this is, yes, he got screwed over. He had jumped through the hoops. He had gotten the championship match at WrestleMania. It was his. He shouldn't have had to risk it, but there is the argument out there that if he could not beat Randy Orton, and he couldn't, then does he really deserve that match at WrestleMania? The other argument is, well, he could have an off night or whatever, but if the match had happened 2 nights after WrestleMania on SmackDown and Randy Orton won, then he would have had a 2-night championship reign. What's the point? So that's probably going to be where they go with it. Well, if you couldn't win, you weren't the best, you don't get it. You'll get a shot down the line. I love AJ Styles. I don't think this is writing him out of the main event for long, but obviously the money story with Bray is with Randy Orton. All the rumors are saying that we're getting AJ versus Shane at WrestleMania, which should be crazy. Because Shane may not be able to do a lot, but he's a spot monkey. And AJ Styles has been wrestling spot monkeys for almost 20 years. So he knows how to make that match look good. It's going to be a good one if that's what we get. One thing I wanted to talk with you guys about today, I got into a little conversation on Reddit. Somebody was asking about Jerry Lawler and why he wasn't treated as a main eventer in the early 90s when he had just come from Memphis and was actually still doing some Memphis stuff at the time. But 20 years later on Raw, he's being used as a main eventer versus The Miz. beating a bunch of other people in the Raw Royal Rumble that they did, so that he could get a title shot. And it reminded me of just how hard it was to get other wrestling back then. If you were lucky enough to get these shows on your TV, or to even know that they were there, you might only be aware of one territory. I didn't know who the hell Jerry Lawler was when he showed up on Raw. I didn't get Memphis wrestling where I grew up. It just wasn't on. We got TBS eventually, but the time that my friend tried to talk me into watching WCW, well, it would have been NWA, but the show would have been WCW at the time, was right around the time they were doing the Black Scorpion. And I remember he did a magic trick where he took a fan from the audience and he put a box on their head and he made the head twist around. It was some crappy store-bought magic trick that even got, I don't even want to do the math, but I had to be a very young child at the time, and even then I was too old for that crap. And it's so weird because looking back, that is not what NWA at the time was all about. It was just that one gimmick. But the one time that they tried to do what WWE was doing, they did it so badly that it turned me off. But WWE at the time was booking to who I was at the time. I was a young child, and they were this colorful, cartoonish wrestling. So the WWE booking philosophy of it, if it didn't happen here, it didn't happen, really kind of worked for somebody like me because I wasn't watching the other shows. I didn't know who Jerry Lawler was. It wasn't until years later when Comedy Central, before South Park was a thing, before The Daily Show was even a thing, and they were showing a bunch of Saturday Night Live reruns for probably a third of their programming, they started to air documentaries on Andy Kaufman. And that was really when I found out who Jerry Lawler was. I kind of knew the name because I'd read some of the Aftermags, and they would talk about those, but I didn't have a face to put with the name. It would just be like rankings, Jeff Jarrett is the champion, or Jerry Lawler is the champion. I don't know who these guys are. I'm reading little blurbs about this happened on this show, but I have no face to put with the name. I've never seen the matches. I'm a kid, so I'm not tape trading out of the classifieds in the back. That's how you had to watch these matches if you weren't in the area. People today have it so much better. Back in the day, if you wanted to watch Japanese wrestling, you either had to find somebody who lived in Japan and was recording it, or you could go up on AOL message boards and find a little video like this big from Real Player of a Misawa match. And you'd have like one match. And this is the greatest wrestler ever because other people are calling him the greatest. That's what you had. And AOL came later. This is like the Attitude Era that we're talking about, with AOL being a thing where you could even get that. So you couldn't get this stuff. A lot of times you didn't know who these wrestlers are, but today you find out, Jerry Lawler was the guy that, had this huge thing with Andy Kaufman in Memphis, and they had one night on the David Letterman show back when he was at 12:30 and not 10:30, 11. Back when the old show, the real late night show, which kind of you lose perspective. People think that they're talking about the show that Colbert has now. No, they're talking. I don't even think they're talking about the show that James Corden has now. When they talk about the show that David Letterman was hosting, it was that one. So a lot of people didn't know about it. WWE likes to blow it up to be something huge. And it was big for Memphis, but it wasn't to that extent. But now today, you've got not just the WWE Network, not just New Japan World, you got YouTube, where you've got TNA has like all their old pay-per-views on it now, up until a certain point, for like a $5 subscription. WCPW is putting out new weekly shows on YouTube streaming. Plus, they've got their WCPW Extra. You've got High Spots Network, which is almost every Pro Wrestling Guerrilla show in existence. I think they're missing 17 shows, like the first 8 and another early one, and they don't have like the 7 or 8 most recent. But they've got every other show in between. Beyond Demand, Demand Progress, all these little groups that you hear so much about that are making such big waves, all these British groups, all these different indies that are such big feeders for WWE right now, or Impact. All these guys, before you see them there, you can now watch them. So in some cases, the day of. You've got iPay-per-views from companies that you may never have heard of, but with 7 or 8 talents that are just burning up the business right now. Some of this you can watch live, some of this you can watch a week later, some of this takes a little bit longer, like High Spots, but it's all out there if you want it. It is so easy to be a wrestling fan right now, and I think that we're kind of taking it for granted because it is becoming normal to have this stuff here at your fingertips, and I love it. And I'm not even trying to be crotchety and say, oh, back in my day it was so hard, because I love that it is getting so normal that we take it for granted. I hope it just keeps getting better and better. That is all I have for you today. I'm going to be tossing up the videos. You know how it goes. Hit like if you like this episode. You might have seen something in the credits today that was a little bit different. Don't worry about it. Got a subscribe button somewhere with this smiling face. Hit that. Tell your friends. Tell your enemies. As always, I love you, Trampions. Thank you for checking out the show. Cheers.